All right, so we are into the round of 12, Eric. One race in the books, Dover. Thank goodness Dover no longer in the playoffs. Good
Yes.
riddance. And I'm sure a couple of drivers, young drivers like Ryan Blaney and Chase Elliott, are also happy that Dover is in the rear view as far as the playoffs are concerned. Uh, what do you do about right now when if you are Elliott and Blaney and or Logano, you get off to that really slow start. What what do you have to do when you take a look at the standings? What do these guys have to do if they don't win? What how can they get into the next round?
At this point, they've got to get stage points and just top tens. I know it's going to be hard with this weekend with Talladega. You're going to have all 40 cars running less than a second apart. It's going to be one big group. Uh, for those guys, stage points are going to be the easiest. I mean, right? You got out of let's see, there's two races left, two stages in each. That's 40 points on the line. If you can win all four, granted, it's going to be nearly impossible with two of them being at Talladega, but uh, you got to get points. I mean, Logano's right there on the threshold. He's tied with William Byron, but you don't want to fall too far back because you look at what these guys have done lately at Kansas, even at the next week's race. They've struggled there too. So it's stage points are going to be key, and I'm going to bet that right now that's going to be the difference of making it to the round of 8 and being eliminated next Sunday in Kansas because we've seen that how close this gap is right now and how these drivers are really the cream of the crop getting to this point that if you don't win, there's a chance that these guys could all finish around 10th, if not further out these next 2 weeks. So who can accumulate the most stage points over these next 2 weeks are going to be the ones, in my opinion, that are going to move on.
Big win for Kyle Larson. Finally gets the win. Of course, I wasn't too happy because my top two picks finished second and third. So just when Kyle
Yeah,
Larson
yeah.
decides to hold on and win, he screws me off. But anyway, big win for Kyle Larson. And now he is, what is he, like 6-1 to win the championship?
6-1,
Yeah, so he
yes.
drops all the way down to 6-1 now. Uh, Not sure that I would put him in the same boat as some of those other drivers, but uh, if he can get hot, and that's what it's about, you got the monkey off your back, and we know he's been the type of driver that can get on a run. Not sure this is the week for him to continue that because he's never done particularly well at Talladega, but at least he knows that it doesn't really matter what he does on Sunday. He's going to be on to the round of 8.
Yeah, yeah, and for him winning last week too, it's and on my take the analyst hat off and put the fan hat on that I gave might have led into some picks for my in-laws that they wanted to maybe put some wagers on, and I gave them some drivers and they picked them and they finished 2, 3, 4, and
Oh,
5. They did not. They were that close, and which hey, they're hooked. They won the Roval. I gave them Chase Elliott couple of weeks ago, so they were happy there, and they tried to take that money and double it last weekend, and 2, 3, 4, 5. So they were close, but they're hooked. Now they're wanting to know about Talladega, so which that helps. But now back with the analyst hat on. Yeah, Larson, we talked about that. If he can get to Homestead, then watch out. That's his best track. But yeah, Talladega this week is not. I mean, he's hot lately. I mean, look at our notes here. He's got 8 top 8 finishes in his last 10. Dover wasn't too big of a surprise. He's good there. He ran good all weekend. He was quickest in practice on Friday, quickest in final practice in the 10 lap, 5 lap, all those long run metrics, and he started second. So I wasn't too shocked that he won, but it is good for him because Talladega is not a good track. But I also wrote about this last week. The last 5 Cup champions. None of them were made it past the round of 12. I guess I should take Kevin Harvick out of it because that's kind of an unfair stat since 2013 we didn't run this format. But there you got 5 different Cup champions from 5 different organizations. All 5 of those organizations are represented in this round, minus Chip Ganassi Racing and Kyle Larson. So if they want to keep that streak going, Kyle Larson is trends say he's going to win this championship, and then what's he do? He goes out and wins the race on Sunday, knows he's in the round of 8. Plus, it was an odd stat. Out of those champions, I believe none of them the previous year made it past the round of 12, which is odd. Like Logano last year didn't even make the playoffs. So when the guys like Truex didn't make it out of the first round in 2016, then he won the championship in 2017, and he can go all the way back through Harvick in 2014. Well, Larson didn't; he's never made it to the round of 8. So all these trends are lining up for him to win. That's why it's 6-1. It's going that right direction. But I have a feeling this weekend, odds are he's not going to finish real well. But what his goal is after playoff points, because he talked about this after winning Dover last weekend. He's going to go to the round of 8 and be in a huge deficit just based off of, you just look at Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Martin Truex Jr., Denny Hamlin. If all those guys make it to the round of 8, you got to look at how much more playoff points they have than Kyle Larson. He's going to start off in a big deficit, and he's only got 3 races to make up that ground. Odds are it's not going to happen. Plus, he's got Martinsville. His last top 10 finish there was 2016. In Texas, his last he has 3 top 10s in his last 12. 6 finishes of 23rd or worse at Texas. Those are the first 2 races of that round. That's not going to bode well for him to make up all that ground. Then it's to Phoenix, which has been pretty well Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick's playground, and he's going to have to win that race. So he needs playoff points, and there's 14 of those available between Talladega and Kansas these next 2 races. Kyle Larson just needs to go for that, not focusing on race wins, just get playoff points to try to close that gap.
How do you get playoff points again?
If you win each stage, that's 1 playoff point. And then if you win the race, that's 5 more playoff points. So he's just got to position himself to get stage wins and race wins. It doesn't matter if he finishes top 5 because you can't carry those points over. You only carry playoff points over the next round. So that's his goal. That's all he can do. Playoff points, playoff points, playoff points. So it doesn't matter where he finishes if he doesn't win. It's just checker records for him. And they'll be interesting to watch because they can go off strategy. If I were him, I would position myself. He's got Kurt Busch, who's not in the playoffs anymore, that can help him accomplish that goal. He's going to have a drafting partner to get there. So I would say playoff points is about all he can do over these next 2 weeks.
All right. Well, Kyle Larson also got the job done for CJ because that is Kyle is one of CJ's fantasy drivers. And yes. Martin Truex Jr. is also one of his fantasy drivers. So he finished first and second and accumulated over 1,000 points this past week and has vaulted. You guys are kind of going back and forth for the lead. My guys have turned out to be regular season drivers, so hopefully Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch will kick things into gear as the points continue to grow through each stage, through each round here in the playoffs. So, but you take a look at this week's race, and Talladega is always so wide open, and interesting because I would think that even though Keselowski is CJ's pick, I don't think he's as sure as a thing at Talladega as he was a couple of years ago. Because really, if you look at it, his last 3 results there haven't been all that great. And he's still pretty dominant with 5 wins in 21 races. But not, again, so before it was 5 out of 17 or 16 or whatever it was. So as he goes a little bit further from this last win there, he's not as dominant, and he's not the favorite. And that's just so. I guess the point is that there really isn't that. I mean, there's no Dale Earnhardt, there's no Jeff Gordon with Jimmy Johnson, that kind of team. There's no Tony Stewart, so there's no dominant kind of team or drivers. I guess you could say Keselowski and Logano, who are the top 2 picks out of our 3, is the closest thing to that, and that's probably because they drive a Ford. And Ford has been really dominant at Talladega lately.
Yeah, and they've been the top 2 drivers overall, but it's been a weird trend lately, and I wrote about that this week too, that there hasn't been a lot of fluke winners at Talladega. No. I went back to 1995, and there's only been
2.
6
well, actually, if you look back since the last 10 or 12, I think, to the last 12.
Yeah,
there's only been 2 sleeper / fluke winners.
And if you even look at the quote unquote fluke, I only put that in the category too of like they've got their like first or second career win. But like Keselowski in 2009, that was a
Sure. At
fluke.
the time it
Now he's a
was.
good
Yeah,
plate
sure.
racer. Yeah, yeah, he's not anymore. Stenhouse, you could throw
Yeah,
in that
he was a
category
fluke.
because,
Yes. So is
but he's a
Almirola.
good plate
So is
racer.
Almirola.
Yep, see, that's
Yes.
why. Yep. So I could really go just Vickers and Bobby Hamilton as the only two I could really find. But that's 6 out of the last 49
Yeah.
Talladega races. But if you look at like Daytona and you look at just
Oh
recently
yeah,
as a
recently,
whole,
please. Let's not get to that.
yeah, you got 6 of the last 10 super speedway winners have earned their first or second career win, which is weird. It's like, whoa, what's happening here? And the only ones that aren't part of that group is Keselowski and Logano. If you go to 3 of the last 5 at Dega, 5 of the last 6 at Daytona, they've earned their first or second career wins in general. That it's like, whoa, what's happening here? So it looks like the trend of these drivers, instead of having those years where Michael Waltrip, Dale Earnhardt Jr. And like a Tony Stewart of just those are the only winners you're going to see. It's been wide open lately. And Keselowski, he's got 8 of his last 12 super speedway finishes have been 30th or worse. That's not Keselowski like
Right.
it used to be.
Yep.
And I think we've seen a shift of the racing. The aggression's gone up. And Keselowski made those comments back in July in Daytona when he wrecked William Byron in final practice. And I remember all the drivers were like, "What's he doing?" And he said he's sending a message from the blocking. And we've seen these younger drivers say, "Well, that's just the way you have to run these races anymore. This isn't like the old days, like you guys used to run around here and you take care of each other. The aggression levels are up." It doesn't jive well with some of these drivers, and I think Keselowski's been that casualty. He just hasn't been the same on super speedways. Arguably, the last 3 or 4 years. Granted, he won this playoff race a couple years ago, but that's it. He's just struggled. I mean, you look at overall his finishes. I mean, it's 30th, 34th, 40th, 38th. I mean, it is just it's off. It's weird. So it's like, yeah, yes, he's 10-1. Yes, he's tied with Chase Elliott as the second best odds. But I just don't trust him this week.
Well, that's that's why I went with Logano because I had the first pick, and the one reason that I was a little unsure about going with Logano, really the only reason, was just the way things have gone lately for Joey Logano, especially after last week. I'm not sure he's trending in the right direction, but he does seem to be, and deservedly so, the favorite for a good reason.
Yeah, and this is the race. If Joey Logano is going to win, this is it. Because this is I looked at first like who's hot entering this weekend, who's not, and it's like you could throw some of those out. Some drivers, yes, they just like an Alex Bowman, which we'll get to.
I like that pick. I was actually thinking of taking Bowman myself. That just shows you how wide open it was.
It is, and his aggression level, it just looks like he's a different driver ever since the playoffs started. I mean, he's ruffling feathers with it. It seems like every week there's a driver that's mad at him or he's mad at them.
That's good.
I like his aggression, and that's what you need to win at Talladega. You've got to be aggressive, and I like that. I think that's why, excuse me, I think he could win. Chevy's been great on these tracks lately. He finished second in the spring race, so I like that, and I think Logano, he's going to have aggression. He knows what's at stake. He knows this is a prime opportunity to just go out and win and get himself to the next round and figure out the speed later. Because you look at Kansas in general, he finished 15th in May, and he has 3 finishes of 15th or worse in his last 5 Kansas starts. You don't want to go there with a deficit. Why not just go ahead and win and just get to the next round and not have to worry about it? So I feel like out of any track this round, or really the rest of the playoffs, this is the one Logano's got to have circled. And he's a great, arguably, and I wrote about this, I want to say, I think in the spring race in Talladega, or maybe it was July in Daytona. I think Logano supplanted Keselowski as a top super speedway racer in the game today. I think that guy, out of all the drivers, he just has a knack for it. You can tell he's always up front. He's got 8 top 5, or I'm sorry, in super speedways. He's got 6 top 5s in his last 8 super speedway starts, 5 top 5s in his last 6 Talladega starts. So I'm with you. If I had a top pick, I totally would have went Logano. I just think he's that much better than Keselowski right now, and plus he needs it. Keselowski's plus 20 on the playoff bubble. I don't think he needs to take any risk. To me, granted, it's hard for him because he's an aggressive driver, but if he stays around that plus 20 range,
he's
going to be fine.
Yeah,
but if you get caught up in a wreck, him and Logano could flip flop. So he needs to be smart. Logano needs to be aggressive, and Fords have had good super speedway cars anyway, so I would say Logano 8-1 as the favorite. That's right. He should be the favorite for this weekend.
And that's kind of why when you took Bowman as your top pick, I decided to go with Blaney as my sleeper because I figured, look, I know he doesn't have a great history at this track. He does have a couple of top tens. He has led some laps. There is an experience thing there, but he's got two great partners.
Yes.
And considering he desperately needs a win, if he's partnering up late with Keselowski, we know if there's a choice of who needs to win, then we know who's going to be the one that's going to get benefited, and that's going to be Blaney.
Yeah, Keselowski would do better drafting with him, pushing him, because I think Keselowski, like we talked about, with where he's at, he doesn't need to take the risk. Blaney does. Blaney's 22 points outside looking in, and Kansas, granted, while that's been a good track for him, he's struggled lately. And being 22 points down, I looked at his last three Kansas finishes, and it was 37th, 7th, and 32nd. That's not going to get it done.
Yeah, that's a crapshoot. That's almost like a super speedway.
So it is. So he's got to have a good finish this weekend. I think he's going to be aggressive. Blaney's an aggressive driver by nature anyways, too. And we've seen he's been good on super speedways.
He has been, yeah. Mm-hmm.
He's had bad luck. So I think that's a solid sleeper pick, too. Yeah. So I would say he's going to be running up front unless he gets taken out somebody else's mess, which is that can happen at Talladega. So, yes, I think that's your two picks are very solid there.
By the way, did CJ make his sleeper pick yet?
Let me check again. As a couple minutes ago, no.
Okay, CJ's got Keselowski, as we mentioned. So
he just did.
He did.
He went. Yes, I got it, and it is William Byron.
Wow, William Byron. Okay, I guess we're waiting for the breakout super speedway performance from Byron, but he is. He's been pretty. He's been okay so far in the playoffs. And he does have Chad Knaus, and that's always a nice little extra going into a race like this.
Yes, and you look at Daytona 500, Byron was quick. He just got faded a little bit, shuffled back in the end, and got caught up in somebody else's mess. Talladega, I think in the spring he was pretty strong, but he wasn't quite to his teammates' caliber. And then the Coke Zero Sugar 400 in July, he finished up front, but that was rain shortened. But he was there, so he knows he's got the speed. They just need to cut out the mistakes. Last weekend at Dover killed him. I mean, he was a top 5 car, and he hit that pit road speeding penalty, went back to 13th, never rebounded, and now he's tied with Logano for that last spot. So he's that guy that needs to be aggressive but has to be careful, because if he gets caught up in somebody else's mess, finishes outside the top 20, it's going to be tough in Kansas to make that ground up. So he's got the speed, he's got the potential. He falls into line of that fluke type winners of on their first or second career win and first or second super speedway win. He falls into that, so it'll be interesting. That's a solid sleeper pick for sure, because he's back there at 20-1.
Yeah, the odds are good, and he's also not a Toyota. So none of us have taken a Toyota yet, and that's probably not by accident. As strong as the Gibbs Toyotas usually are from week to week, the fact is Toyota has not won in their last 10 starts at Talladega.
Yeah, 3 wins overall. And the numbers are on their side. And we saw really this new manufacturer teammate work. That's what we're going to see this weekend. All the drivers have already said that. And Toyota, coincidentally enough, started this, and now it's the bed they've got to lay in when they all worked together in the 2016 Daytona 500. And then we saw the Fords take over and really revolutionize that. And it wasn't just because in Toyota, they just had Gibbs and Furniture Row at that time. Fords are like, whoa, we got strength in numbers here. Let's all team up. And it works from really the 2016 Talladega race through this tapered spacer when that began. And then Chevy figured it out that, wait a minute. We got strength in numbers too. And Brad Keselowski even said back in July that he feels like Chevy's got, like when they line up, more horsepower. They've got something figured out that Fords and Toyotas can't compete with. And so we got 18 Chevys in the field. We know they're working together. 15 Fords in the field. They're working together. Well, you've only got 7 Toyotas, and 4 of them are Gibbs. 1 of them's Levine. The other 2, Parker Kligerman and the Gaunt brothers. And I can't remember who the 7th one is, which says something because it's not going to be a factor of a car. So realistically, they've got 5 Toyotas that are going to be running compared to 15 Fords and 18. You can't keep up.
Yeah.
And we saw that, and they had one car finish in the top 18 in the spring race, 2 in the top 21 in the Coke Zero Sugar 400. The numbers aren't on their side, so they need to work together. And like Hamlin said, they're going to have to latch on to a train of one of the other groups, whether it be Ford or Chevy, which means the odds of them being at the front of that train slim to none, because they're going to get hung out to dry if so. So they're going to have to line up in the middle. So I do not think this is going to be a good Toyota weekend unless you see a lot of wrecks and a lot of other cars get taken out, which is possible. When you have manufacturers working together, we saw that in the July race in Daytona. You can see a lot of them taken out in the same wreck. So that could work in Toyota's favor if you see a 18 car, a big one, and you've got 9 Chevys and 9 Fords in it. That cuts their fleet in half, which puts it back into Toyota numbers. So
it's not that the Toyota drivers don't know how to drive at Talladega, because they do. We have Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin. I mean, these guys know, and even Truex, they've had some experience. Hamlin's probably the best out of them all, which if Toyota had some recent success at this track, he probably would have been my top pick. I think he's righted the ship a little bit after the 5th place finish at Dover last week. He's still right now my choice, even though I'm kind of Truex is kind of there as well. If I'm picking who my top 2 contenders are for the championship, so I actually expect Hamlin to have out of the Toyotas. I think he would be the top driver that I would keep an eye on at 12-1.
Yes, same here. He's going to be aggressive, but I think for them, their game plan for this weekend, the blueprint, ought to just go to the back, stay out of all that mess, let those guys take each other out, and then be there in the end. Because you got to look at the three of them. Jones isn't in the playoffs anymore, so it doesn't matter to him. He's going to be a good teammate to help him. Same with the Benedetto. He wants to win, but he knows in order to win, you got to have drafting help. He needs those guys to be there in the end. So if I were them, I would line up all 5 of them, just go to the back. Stage points aren't going to mean much because Truex is plus 63, Hamlin and Busch are plus 48. Those guys just need to be there at the end. Throw away the stage points and get top 10s in the end and further your gap on the bubble so you can live easy next weekend in Kansas.
Isn't that what NASCAR wants to see, though? They want to see drivers driving in the back.
Yep.
So if we see that on Sunday, and we might, then that'll be talked about, especially if they do avoid trouble. And it's not always easy to avoid trouble just because you're driving in the back, by the way.
No, we've seen it. We've seen those guys get caught up, even running several car links back, and you just can't get well down enough, and you run into people. So I would say that for them, that's what I would do. I would just go off strategy, pit, get right around the back a little bit, and just hope the other manufacturers get caught up in some big ones and cut their fleet in half. So then you go in the end knowing, hey, we've got 5 cars that none of them are tore up. All of them have good aerodynamics on them because you haven't been involved in anything. You guys may have 10 cars and 8 cars or whatever, but we're all teammates left. You might have lost some teammates too. So I think that's their game plan to get to the front, and they might be able to steal a win because of that. If not, I do think it'll be a Chevy versus Ford battle for the win.
And by the way, just to go back to what we were talking about, why this is a little bit more wide open than the past with those drivers that have won a lot at this track, here's all the proof you need. Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, and Kevin Harvick in a combined, we're talking close to maybe 100 races, have only 1 win apiece.
Yeah.
3 wins total from those 3 drivers. Kurt Busch has never won at Talladega. Martin Truex Jr. has never won at Talladega. Those are especially if you just put Kyle Busch, Harvick, Hamlin, and Truex. Those are like 4 of the top drivers right now, and they got to combine 3 wins at this racetrack.
Yeah, it's not good. Hey, you look at Truex; he's got 0 top 10s there since 2015. He's got his last 6 Talladega finishes have all been 20th or worse. He's not even in the top 20.
No,
and you look at
he's
Kevin Harvick,
25-1 to win a race. Martin Truex Jr. Holy crap!
And he's a championship favorite, and he's 25-1.
Yeah,
and you got Kevin Harvick. He's been 20th or worse. I think it was 4 of his last 5 Talladega starts. He's got 1 top 5 finish there since 2011. Out of his last 24 Talladega starts, so you're going back 12 years,